Hello everyone, Mark here. Now we are going to listen to podcast news which includes national, international news. While walking in the morning or evening, while cooking, cycling or during free time you can listen. It will enhance your learning and understanding of various accents and pronunciations. Listening improves the quality of communication and comprehension. Before going ahead, I would like to welcome you all to the virtual school. A new way of learning and teaching, with the vision of Let's Grow Together. Our mission is to learn how to learn and teach how to teach. So stay tuned. And here we go. June 14, 2021. Important national news. A year after Galwan clash, China's strengthening base along the LACPLA has rotated troops, built fresh infrastructure, hospitals in the area. Moving back, a February 10 photo of tanks pulling back from the banks of Pangong Lake. AP. Dinkar Perry, New Delhi. A year since the clash between the armies of India and China in the Galwan Valley in eastern Ladakh, the Chinese People's Liberation Army, PLA, has built additional accommodation in the depth areas along the line of actual control, LAC, on its side and is preparing for the long haul, according to official sources. PLA has built additional accommodations, both permanent and temporary, in Rudok, Kangsawar, Jiantse and Galmud areas. Construction of field hospitals and procurement of additional snow mobility vehicles by the PLA also indicate that they are preparing for the long haul and permanent winter occupation of these posts, a source said. Regiments replaced. According to intelligence inputs, the Chinese troops in the Pangong Tso Lake area have all been rotated. China's 4th and 6th divisions were withdrawn from both the banks of Pangong Lake to Rutog County for repairs in February, and returned to Xinjiang for repairs in the past 3 weeks. They were replaced by the 8th and 11th divisions. Each division has 2 mobile infantry regiments, an armored regiment, an artillery regiment and an air defense regiment. China is also intensifying construction work behind the main confrontation points in Aksai Chin, the source said, citing intelligence inputs. The PLA has also conducted exercises in Tibet and opposite Arunachal Pradesh. For instance, in the first week of this month, the PLA conducted a small arms training at Shigatse in Tibet. The PLA soldiers were trained in anti-tank rocket launchers, grenade launchers, anti-aircraft machine guns and other weapons, according to inputs. In early May, Chinese state media Global Times reported that a unit of the PLA in the Xinjiang military district under the Western Theater Command had deployed new long-range heavy rocket artillery in the border region at an altitude of 5,200 meters. Training was also recently conducted at a location opposite Tawang in Arunachal Pradesh at an altitude of 5,130 meters by a regiment from the Shannon Army Division, the official stated. Chief of Defense Staff General Bipin Rawat recently said all armies carried out training activities during peacetime, and the conduct of exercises was one such event to maintain operational preparedness. He added that China as well as India had carried out turnover of troops, and the best way to familiarize new troops was to carry out exercises. Fight against authoritarianism, extremism, says PM at G7 Meet India, natural ally of the grouping, says Modi at special session on open societies. Suhasini Haidar, New Delhi. India is a natural ally to work with the world's richest G7 countries to fight against threats of authoritarianism, said Prime Minister Narendra Modi, speaking at a special outreach session for guest countries on open societies and open economies at the G7 summit that ended in Corbis Bay, UK, on Sunday. Marking out the need for a free, open, and inclusive Indo-Pacific, officials also said the government will study US President Joseph Biden's proposal for a Build Back Better World B3W initiative, seen as a counter to China's $1 trillion Belt and Road Initiative, that was endorsed by the G7, keeping in mind the principles of transparency and inclusion. However, in a departure from the main 25-page G7 communique, which was issued by US, UK, Germany, France, Canada, Italy, and Japan, and contained negative references to China on the issue of its aggression in the East and South China Sea, and human rights issues in Xinjiang, Maya officials said Chinese aggression was not raised at the outreach meetings with guest countries Australia, South Korea, and South Africa, and that there are other forums where it is being discussed. The communique also made a strong call for a timely, transparent, expert-led, and science-based WHO convened Phase 2 COVID-19 origins study, including, as recommended by the experts' report, in China, that India had also called for in a statement during the World Health Assembly last month. As the world's largest democracy, India is a natural ally for the G7 and guest countries to defend shared values from authoritarianism, terrorism, and violent extremism, disinformation and infodemics and economic coercion, said MAA Secretary, Economic Relations, P. Harish, describing Mr. Modi's virtual intervention at the summit, where Mr. Modi was the only leader not to be physically present, owing to the COVID-19 second wave in India. Mr. Modi also called on tech companies and social media platforms to ensure a safe cyber environment for all, a statement significant given the government's recent regulatory issues with Facebook, Twitter and other tech companies. Hyderabad toll shows massive undercountGHMC excess deaths 10 times Telangana toll. Srinivasan Ramani Vignesh Radhakrishnan. The number of excess deaths registered in the Greater Hyderabad Municipal Corporation, GMHC, ever since COVID-19 hit, from April 2020 to May 2021, is over 10 times the officially recorded figure of 3,275 deaths for the corresponding period in the entire state of Telangana. There were an estimated 32,752 excess deaths, 18,420 between April and December 2020 and 14,332 between January and May 2021. Excess deaths in the GHMC were calculated based on the number of death certificates issued. The month-wise number for the last 2 years was accessed by the Hindu and compared with data for 2016 to 2019 that were obtained via DUCT and RTI. The 2021 figures were analyzed till May 31st. For the first 5 months of 2021, the 14,332 excess deaths in the city corporation limits were 8.2 times more than the official COVID-19 death toll of 1,740 for the entire state. These excess deaths were calculated as the difference between the 36,041 certified deaths in 2021 and the average number of certified deaths in the same period in the pre-pandemic years between 2016 and 2019, 21,709. Delhi lifts more curbs, eateries to reopen with 50% capacity. Special Correspondent, New Delhi. Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal on Sunday said all shops and markets, restaurants at 50% capacity, and religious places will be allowed to open from June 14 under the phased unlock plan for the city. Authorities will observe the situation at the markets and restaurants for a week. If people follow COVID-19 protocols and cases do not increase in the next week, they will be allowed to remain open, he said. The pandemic situation is coming under control in Delhi. Cases have reduced significantly, now the concern is to bring the economy back on track. In case a third wave comes, preparations for that are in full swing, the CM said. Last week, shops were allowed to open only on an odd-even basis, now they can open on all days from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Beauty parlors and barber shops can open along with one weekly market per zone per day. Educational institutions, gatherings and congregations for social, political, sports, entertainment and festivals, cinema halls, auditoriums, banquet halls, spas, gyms, yoga institutes, public parks and gardens will remain closed. Marriages can be held only at home or in court with a maximum of 20 people in attendance. Probe reveals mass trafficking of women from Bangladesh. Bengaluru police uncover another prostitution racket. Special Correspondent, Bengaluru. While investigating the gang rape and torture of a Bangladeshi woman in Bengaluru, the Ramamurthy Nagar police have unearthed another prostitution racket. The rescued women told the police that they and hundreds of other women had been brought illegally from Bangladesh into India by traffickers. During a recent raid, the police arrested 4 people and rescued 7 women in Kanaknagar K. Chanasandra, close to the police station. The police also rescued a 5-year-old girl, believed to be the daughter of one of the women. The arrest of the prime accused, Shobha J., helped the police uncover the prostitution racket. The women were allegedly brought to the country by the human trafficking gang that Shobha J. is part of. They told us that they were among the hundreds of women who crossed the border illegally from Bangladesh into India a few months ago. They were assisted by one Rafiq Ashraful from Bangladesh who helped them evade the border security personnel. We believe he is part of the gang and operates from Bangladesh, said a senior police official. After entering India, the women were taken to Howrah in West Bengal and kept there for a few days, while the traffickers allegedly organized identity proof documents. They were then sent to different cities. The traffickers had promised them good jobs, but once they arrived at a city they were forced into prostitution. In Bengaluru, Shobhu and the others would retain a major share of what the women earned, said the official. Decision on Class 12 marks to be put off, likely to recommend using Class X and 11 final scores, Class 12 internals, says CBSE panel member. The panel was scheduled to submit its recommendation on Monday. Rohit Jain Paras. Priscilla Jebaraj, New Delhi. After 10 days of gathering inputs and deliberating on how to assign marks for Class 12 students from the Central Board of Secondary Education, CBSE, an expert panel is largely in favor of using a combination of final exam scores from Class X and 11, and internal marks from Class 12. Officials say the panel may take a few more days for a final decision, although it was scheduled to submit its recommendation on Monday. Class 12 board examinations, scheduled to be held in May, were cancelled because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Announcing the decision on June 1, Prime Minister Narendra Modi added that CBSE will take steps to compile the results of Class 12 students as per a well-defined objective criteria in a time-bound manner. Subsequently, on June 4, CBSE announced a 12-member panel of stakeholders to decide that criteria within 10 days. Although that deadline ends on Monday, 2 members of the panel told The Hindu that it was likely to be extended by a few days. The panel has consulted with CBSE principals, as well as with the centrally run Kendriya Vidyalaya and Navodaya Vidyalaya schools to get their feedback. With all Delhi state government schools affiliated to the CBSE, Deputy Chief Minister Manish Sisodia wrote to Education Minister Ramesh Pokhriyal Nishank on Friday as well. His suggestion is to give 30% weightage to Class 12 internal pre-board exams, and 20% weightage each to Class X board exams and Class 9 internal final exams. This would add up to the 70% score given for theory exams, leaving the remaining 30% to Class 12 practical exam marks. Most stakeholders are in favor of something similar to the Delhi government proposal, but we have not reached a final consensus yet, one member of the panel told The Hindu. It was felt that this is the best option to judge a consistent student. Class X marks would be considered reliable as they were board exams. And we will also enforce the school moderation method to ensure that internal marks are not inflated beyond the school's usual mark distribution in previous years. Another option would be to use the internal marks from pre-board exams, unit tests, and project work in Class 12 only. Most stakeholders were not in favor of this, as it was felt that not all students may have been able to attend exams this year because of COVID, said the panel member, adding that there was a higher possibility of schools inflating marks using this option. The panel is not likely to recommend that only grades be assigned, rather than specific marks, said the member. Yes, the central universities may use a common entrance test for admissions and not use Class 12 marks at all. But most state universities and smaller universities are dependent on Class 12 marks for admission. We cannot assign grades alone, added the member. Mystery shrouds probe into actor Sushant's death a year and several efforts later, no charge sheet filed yet. Sushant Singh Rajput Rafiq Maqbool. Sonam Saigal, Mumbai. Sunday marked the first death anniversary of 34-year-old Bollywood actor Sushant Singh Rajput. Soon after he was found dead at his Bandra apartment in Mumbai, political parties started trying to gain mileage from the incident, leading to investigations by the Central Bureau of Investigation, CBI, the Enforcement Directorate, ED, and the Narcotics Control Bureau, NCB. But none of the agencies have brought out a concrete report on Sushant's death. The Mumbai police registered an accidental death report and said the actor had died by suicide. After his death, then Mumbai police spokesperson and Deputy Commissioner of Police Pranay Ashok had said, he died by suicide. The police have not found any suicide note yet. But 14 days later, on June 28, 2020, the actor's father registered an First Information Report, FIR, in Patna accusing 6 people, including actor Riya Chakraborty and her family members, of abetting Sushant's suicide. The actor's father, in his complaint, also claimed that 15 Indian rupees crore had been transferred from his son's account to a few bank accounts. The FIR at Bihar saw the ED register a case on July 31, 2020, and begin a probe into alleged money laundering. Meanwhile, a team of the Bihar police arrived in Mumbai to investigate the case and found no cooperation from the Mumbai police in the matter. The Mumbai police did not cooperate as they felt it was against the norms to register an FIR in Bihar into a case that it, the Mumbai police, was investigating. This led to political outrage, following which the Bihar government transferred the case to the CBI. On August 6, 2020, the CBI registered an FIR against Ms. Chakraborty and others, and started a probe. Meanwhile, the ED, which is probing the money laundering case, found mention of drugs in mobile phone data it had recovered during its investigation. Based on a letter from the ED, the NCB was roped into the investigation. After 10 months of investigation, NCB Zonal Director Samir Vankadesh told The Hindu, "We have so far arrested 35 accused, seized 7 kilograms of drugs, 35 Indian rupees lakh, and some foreign currency." The investigation in the Sushant Singh murder case is still going on. CBI officials said the investigation was on. "We are investigating from all possible angles," said a senior CBI officer. MHA order inviting citizenship applications faces SC challenge. The May 28 directive is discriminatory, say petitioners. Legal correspondent, New Delhi. A May 28 order of the Ministry of Home Affairs, MHA, inviting non-Muslim refugees such as Hindus, Sikhs, Jains, and Buddhists belonging to Afghanistan, Bangladesh and Pakistan residing in 13 districts of Gujarat, Rajasthan, Chhattisgarh, Haryana, and Punjab to apply for Indian citizenship is increasingly becoming the focus of challenge before the Supreme Court. A recent petition filed in the top court by Anis Ahmed, through advocate Selvin Raja, said the government order utterly discriminates and deprives a class of persons, namely, the Muslims. Mr. Ahmed argued that the May 28 order does not withstand the test of Article 14 inasmuch as it treats people within a particular class, or persons entitled to apply for citizenship by registration and naturalization, unequally by virtue of their religion. Identical arguments have been made in 2 earlier petitions filed by the Indian Union of Muslim League, IUML, and the Popular Front of India in the Supreme Court against the executive order issued by the ministry. Mr. Ahmed urged the court to declare the MHA order unconstitutional, discriminatory, and ultra-vires, as it seeks to utterly deprive the Muslims to seek for citizenship by registration and naturalization unequally by virtue of their religion under Sections 5 and 6 of the Citizenship Act, 1955. A fortnight ago, the IUML, through advocates Harris Bayran and Pallavi Pratap, urged the Supreme Court to stay the May 28 order. It said the order delegates the power to grant citizenship by registration and naturalization to the collectors of these districts. The IUML said the Home Ministry's order was a ruse to implement the malafide designs of the controversial Citizenship Amendment Act, CAA, to grant Indian citizenship on the sole basis of religion. According to the CAA, Indian citizenship would be given to non-Muslim persecuted minorities from Bangladesh, Pakistan, and Afghanistan Hindu, Sikh, Jain, Buddhist, Parsi and Christian who came to India till December 31, 2014. The party said the CAA was already under challenge before the Supreme Court and the May 28 order intends to circumvent judicial scrutiny. The government had earlier averted a stay on the CAA by assuring the top court that the rules under the act had not yet been framed. There were widespread protests in different parts of the country following the enactment of the CAA in 2019. Delhi had even seen riots in February last year. The IUML had said classification of applicants for citizenship on the basis of religion is illegal. The order does not withstand the test of Article 14 inasmuch as it treats people within a particular class, i.e. persons entitled to apply for citizenship by registration and naturalization unequally by virtue of their religion. Only 3.5% of population is fully vaccinated so far. India continues to report highest number of cases. Special Correspondent, Chennai. India recorded 67,699 new COVID-19 cases and 3,863 new deaths till 9:30 p.m. on Sunday. The country has so far reported a total of 2,95,12,862 cases and 3,71,440 deaths. Tamil Nadu reported 14,016 new infections, followed by Kerala, 11,584, and Maharashtra, 10,442. Maharashtra recorded 2,771 new fatalities, followed by Tamil Nadu, 267, and Kerala, 206. Maharashtra's fatalities include backlog deaths, which were missed in the previous reports. The figures do not include cases and deaths from Assam, Arunachal Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Tripura, and Ladakh. The data are sourced from the respective states' health bulletins. Around 19 lakh samples were tested in the country on Saturday, the results for which were made available on Sunday. About 34.84 lakh vaccine doses were administered in the country in the 24 hours ending 7 a.m. on Sunday, which was 50,476 doses more than what was recorded in the previous 24 hours. It was also 1.3 lakh doses more than what was recorded during the corresponding period a week ago. The 7-day rolling average of daily vaccinations in the country continued to increase. It stood at 30.14 lakh on June 12, which was more than the 26.96 lakh recorded a week before, June 5. About 21.8% of adults in India, 42.1% of those aged above 45, and 45.9% of people aged above 60, had been administered at least one dose of a COVID-19 vaccine, until 8 p.m. on Sunday. While 15% of the country's population has received at least one dose, only 3.5% are fully vaccinated. The figures are based on the estimated population in 2021. The share of people who are fully vaccinated in comparable economies such as Brazil, Russia, and South Africa is 11.07%, 9.78% and 0.81%, respectively. Among neighboring countries, about 2.57% of Bangladesh's population is fully vaccinated, while the figure for Pakistan and Sri Lanka stood at 1.29% and 2.02%, respectively. India continued to record the highest number of daily cases in the world, with 90,090 average daily infections on June 12. The two other countries with the highest case count after India are Brazil, 66,770 cases, and Colombia, 25,384. Tree of coffee family discovered in Andaman and Nicobar. Pyrostria lalgii is the first record of genus Pyrostria in India. Pyrostria lalgii. Shiv Sahai Singh, Kolkata. A 15-meter-tall tree that belongs to the genus of the coffee family has recently been discovered from the Andaman Islands by a team of researchers from India and the Philippines. The new species, Pyrostria lalgii, is also the first record of the genus Pyrostria in India, the researchers said. Plants belonging to genus Pyrostria are usually found in Madagascar, but the recently discovered species is new to science. The tree is distinguished by a long stem with a whitish coating on the trunk and oblong obovate leaves with a cuneate base, and was first reported from the Wandoer forest in South Andaman. The other places in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands where the tree could be located are the Dirur forest near the Jarawar Reserve forest and the Chidayatapu, Munda Pahar, forest. Pyrostria lalgii has been assessed as critically endangered, based on the International Union for Conservation of Nature's IUCN Red List criteria. M. C. Nayak from the Botanical Survey of India, M. Bhimalingappa from the Sri Krishna Devaraya University, Anantapuram, and Axel H. Areola from University of the East, Manila, Philippines, published the details of the discovery a few months ago in an international, peer-reviewed journal Annals Botanici Fenici. Mr. Nayak pointed out that the discovery was unique as the species was a big tree and had not been recorded as a new species yet. The species has been named Pyrostria lalgii after Lalji Singh, Joint Director and Head of Office, Andaman and Nicobar Regional Centre, Botanical Survey of India. While the genus Pyrostria is not found in India, there are several genera from the family Rubiaceae that are common in India. These plants, including cinchona, coffee, adena, haemlia, ixora, galium, gardenia, musenda, rubia, morinda, have high potential for economic value. More studies should be carried out to ascertain whether Pyrostria lalgii could have some economic value, Dr. Singh said. Other physical features that distinguish the tree from other species of the genus is its umbellate inflorescence with 8 to 12 flowers. Dr. Singh and Mr. Nayak have also discovered a new species of pokeweed named Rivina andamanensis. They said it was found growing under large trees, shaded and rocky areas, along with herbs and shrubby plants. This discovery of new species, representing the first record of the pokeweed family Pitaviriaceae in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, adds one more family to the island's flora, the researchers said. Thank you. International news. Israel coalition set to end Netanyahu. EraNaftali. Bennett will take over as Prime Minister after Knesset vote to install the new government. New beginning. Naftali Bennett addressing the Knesset ahead of the vote on the new government in Jerusalem. Of Pamanuel Dunant. Associated Press. Jerusalem. Israel is set to swear in a new government on Sunday that will send Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu into the opposition after a record 12 years in office in a political crisis that sparked 4 elections in 2 years. Naftali Bennett, the head of a small ultra-nationalist party, will take over as Prime Minister. But if he wants to keep the job, he will have to maintain an unwieldy coalition of parties from the political right, left and center. The 8 parties, including a small Arab faction that is making history by sitting in the ruling coalition, are united in their opposition to Mr. Netanyahu and new elections but agree on little else. They are likely to pursue a modest agenda that seeks to reduce tensions with the Palestinians and maintain good relations with the US without launching any major initiatives. Mr. Netanyahu, who is on trial for corruption, remains the head of the largest party in parliament and is expected to vigorously oppose the new government. If just one faction bolts, it could lose its majority and would be at risk of collapse, giving him an opening to return to power. Deep divisions. The country's deep divisions were on vivid display as Mr. Bennett addressed Parliament ahead of the vote. He was repeatedly interrupted and loudly heckled by supporters of Mr. Netanyahu, several of whom were escorted out of the chamber. Mr. Bennett's speech mostly dwelled on domestic issues, but he expressed opposition to US efforts to revive Iran's nuclear deal with world powers. Israel will not allow Iran to arm itself with nuclear weapons, Mr. Bennett said, vowing to maintain Mr. Netanyahu's confrontational policy. Israel will not be a party to the agreement and will continue to preserve full freedom of action. Mr. Bennett nevertheless thanked President Joe Biden and the US for its decades of support for Israel. Mr. Netanyahu vowed to return to power. He predicted the incoming government would be weak on Iran and give in to US demands to make concessions to the Palestinians. If it is destined for us to be in the opposition, we will do it with our backs straight until we topple this dangerous government and return to lead the country in our way, he said. Stability expected. Yohanan Plesner, president of the Israel Democracy Institute, a nonpartisan think tank, said the new government will likely be more stable than it appears. Even though it has a very narrow majority, it will be very difficult to topple and replace because the opposition is not cohesive, he said. Each party in the coalition will want to prove that it can deliver, and for that they need time and achievements. Still, Mr. Netanyahu will continue to cast a shadow, Mr. Plesner said. The new government is meanwhile promising a return to normalcy after a tumultuous 2 years that saw 4 elections, an 11-day Gaza war last month and a coronavirus outbreak that devastated the economy before it was largely brought under control by a successful vaccination campaign. The driving force behind the coalition is Yair Lapid, a political centrist who will become prime minister in 2 years, if the government lasts that long. He called off a planned speech to parliament, instead saying he was ashamed that his 86-year-old mother had to witness the raucous behavior of his opponents. In a brief speech, he asked for forgiveness from my mother. I wanted her to be proud of the democratic process in Israel. Instead she, along with every citizen of Israel, is ashamed of you and remembers clearly why it's time to replace you, he said. The new government is expected to win a narrow majority in the 120-member assembly, after which it will be sworn in. The government plans to hold its first official meeting later this evening. G7 agrees to boost climate finance, calls on others to join pledges of cash promises lack specifics, say green groups. Call for action, G7 leaders attending the summit in Carbis Bay, UK, on Sunday. Getty Images WPA Pool. Reuters Carbis Bay. G7 leaders agreed on Sunday to raise their contributions to meet an overdue spending pledge of $100 billion a year to help poorer countries cut carbon emissions and cope with global warming, calling on other developed countries to join the effort. But campaigners said firm cash promises were missing. Alongside plans billed as helping speed infrastructure funding in developing countries in a shift to renewable and sustainable technology, the world's 7 largest advanced economies again pledged to meet the climate finance target. But climate groups said the promise made in the summit's final communiqué lacked detail, most importantly a figure for the increases. A spokesman for British Prime Minister Boris Johnson said nations would set out their increases in due course. Germany said it would boost its contribution by €2 billion to €6 billion, $7.26 billion, a year by 2025 at the latest. In the communiqué, the 7 nations, the US, Britain, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, and Japan, reaffirmed their commitment to jointly mobilize $100 billion per year from public and private sources, through to 2025. Towards this end, we commit to each increase and improve our overall international public climate finance contributions for this period and call on other developed countries to join and enhance their contributions to this effort. There was a clear push by leaders at the G7 summit in southwestern England to try to counter China's increasing influence in the world, particularly among developing nations. The leaders signaled their desire to build a rival to Beijing's multi-trillion-dollar Belt and Road Initiative, but the details were few and far between. Mr. Johnson, host of the gathering in Carbis Bay, told a news conference that developed nations had to move further, faster. G7 countries account for 20% of global carbon emissions, and we were clear this weekend that action has to start with us, he said. And while it's fantastic that every one of the G7 countries has pledged to wipe out our contributions to climate change, we need to make sure we're achieving that as fast as we can and helping developing countries at the same time. Pledge overdue. Some green groups were unimpressed with the climate pledges. Catherine Pettengill, director at Climate Action Network, an umbrella group for advocacy organizations, said the G7 had failed to rise to the challenge of agreeing on concrete commitments on climate finance. We had hoped that the leaders of the world's richest nations would come away from this week having put their money where their mouth is, she said. Tasnim Essop, executive director at Climate Action International, said rich countries must put new and additional finance on the table. Developed countries agreed at the UN in 2009 to together contribute $100 billion each year by 2020 in climate finance to poorer countries, many of whom are grappling with rising seas, storms and droughts made worse by climate change. That target was not met, derailed in part by the pandemic that also forced Britain to postpone the UN Climate Change Conference, 26 Colombian pesos, until later this year. The G7 also said 2021 should be a turning point for our planet, and to accelerate efforts to cut greenhouse gas emissions and keep the 1.5 Celsius global warming threshold within reach. Britain calls Macron's view of an Ireland offensive. Foreign Secretary says the idea, Northern Ireland is not a part of UK, creates great concern, great consternation. Associated Press. Falmouth. Britain accused European Union leaders on Sunday of holding the offensive view that Northern Ireland is not fully part of the United Kingdom, as Brexit cast a shadow over the Group of Seven summit. Britain and the EU are in a spat over post-Brexit trade arrangements that could see British sausages banned from entering Northern Ireland, the only part of the UK that borders the 27-nation bloc. The dispute is raising political tensions in Northern Ireland, where some people identify as British and some as Irish. Sausage Row. British media reported that Prime Minister Boris Johnson asked French President Emmanuel Macron when they met on Saturday in Carbis Bay how he would feel if sausages from Toulouse could not be moved to Paris. They said Mr. Macron replied the comparison did not work because Paris and Toulouse were part of the same country. The French presidency did not deny Mr. Macron had made the comments. It said he was explaining that Toulouse and Paris were on a geographical unity of territory, Northern Ireland is on an island. The president wanted to stress that the situation was quite different and that it's not appropriate to hold that kind of comparison. UK Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab said the idea Northern Ireland was not an integral part of the UK was not only offensive, it has real-world effects on the communities in Northern Ireland, creates great concern, great consternation. Can you imagine if we talked about Catalonia, the Flemish part of Belgium, Northern Italy, Corsican France, as different countries, he said on Sky News. We need a bit of respect here. And also, frankly, an appreciation of the situation for all communities in Northern Ireland. Relations between Britain and the EU have soured since the UK made its final break from the bloc at the end of 2020, more than 4 years after voting to leave. Can extradite cyber criminals to US only on reciprocal basis. Biden to raise the issue of cyber attacks and meet with Putin. Vladimir Putin. Reuters. Moscow. President Vladimir Putin has said Russia would be ready to hand over cyber criminals to the United States if Washington did the same for Moscow, and the two powers reached an agreement to that effect. Mr. Putin made the comments in an interview aired in excerpts on state television on Sunday ahead of a June 16 summit with U.S. President Joe Biden in Geneva. Ties between the powers are badly strained over an array of issues. The Russian leader said he expected the Geneva meeting to help establish bilateral dialogue and revive personal contacts, adding that important issues for the two men included strategic stability, Libya and Syria, and the environment. Mr. Putin also praised Mr. Biden for having shown professionalism when the United States and Russia agreed this year to extend the New START nuclear arms control treaty. The White House has said Mr. Biden will bring up ransomware attacks emanating from Russia at the meeting. That issue is in the spotlight after a cyber attack disrupted the North American and Australian operations of meat packer JBS USA. A Russia-linked hacking group was behind that attack, a U.S. source familiar with the matter said last week. Asked if Russia would be prepared to find and prosecute cyber criminals, Mr. Putin said Russia's behavior here would depend on formal agreements being reached by Moscow and Washington. Both sides would have to commit to the same obligations, he said. If we agree to extradite criminals, then of course Russia will do that, we will do that, but only if the other side, in this case the United States, agrees to the same and will extradite the criminals in question to the Russian Federation, he said. The question of cybersecurity is one of the most important at the moment because turning all kinds of systems off can lead to really difficult consequences, he said. A rare solidarity for Rohingya. Myanmar's anti-junta protesters wear black flag, make #Black4Rohingya trending. Crucial support, protesters holding banners while making the three-finger salute during a demonstration in Yangon. Agence France Presse Yangon. Anti-junta protesters flooded Myanmar's social media with pictures of themselves wearing black Sunday in a show of solidarity for the Rohingya, a minority group that is among the most persecuted in the country. Since the military ousted civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi from power in a February 1 coup, an anti-junta movement demanding a return to democracy has grown to include fighting for ethnic minority rights. The mostly Muslim Rohingya, long viewed as interlopers from Bangladesh by many in Myanmar, have for decades been denied citizenship, rights, access to services and freedom of movement. Activists and civilians took to social media on Sunday to post pictures of themselves wearing black and flashing a three-finger salute of resistance, in posts tagged #Black4Rohingya. Justice must be served for each of you and each of us in Myanmar, said prominent rights activist Thinzar Shunli on Twitter. Local media also showed a small protest in Myanmar's commercial hub Yangon, with black-clad demonstrators holding signs in Burmese that said they were protesting for the oppressed Rohingya. By afternoon, the #Black4Rohingya hashtag was trending on Twitter in Myanmar, with more than 180,000 mentions. Sunday's show of support from the mostly Buddhist, ethnic Bamar majority population is a far cry from previous years, when even using the term Rohingya was a lightning rod for controversy. Military crackdown. In 2017, a bloody military campaign in Myanmar's west sent some 7,40,000 Rohingya fleeing across the border into Bangladesh carrying accounts of rape, mass killings and arson. The military has long claimed the crackdown was justified to root out insurgents, and Ms. Suu Kyi also defended the army's conduct by traveling to The Hague to rebut charges of genocide at the UN's top court. The Myanmar public was largely unsympathetic to the Rohingyas' plight, while activists and journalists reporting on the issues faced vitriolic abuse online. Prominent Europe-based Rohingya activist Rone Sanlwin said the online campaign is a yearly effort to raise awareness, but Sunday was the first time he had seen it go viral in Myanmar. I am so happy to see those inside Myanmar joined this campaign. I am more hopeful to have a stronger solidarity from them, he said. Rare earth metals at the heart of China-US rivalry. Beijing's dominance in these minerals, key to the future of manufacturing, is a cause for concern for the West. Fight for supremacy. In 2019, the U.S. imported 80% of its rare earth minerals from China, says U.S. Geological Survey. AP. Agence France Presse in New York. What if China were to cut off the US and Europe from access to rare minerals that are essential to electric vehicles, wind turbines, and drones? At a time of frequent geopolitical friction among those three powers, Washington and Brussels want to avoid this scenario by investing in the market for 17 minerals with unique properties that today are largely extracted and refined in China. The expected exponential growth in demand for minerals that are linked to clean energy is putting more pressure on US and Europe to take a closer look at where the vulnerabilities are and the concrete steps these governments can take, said Jane Nakano, a senior fellow at the Washington-based Center for Strategic and International Studies. Heavy dependence. In 2019, the US imported 80% of its rare earth minerals from China, the US Geological Survey says. The EU gets 98% of its supply from China, the European Commission said last year. Amid the transition to green energy, in which rare earth minerals are sure to play a role, China's market dominance is enough to sound an alarm in Western capitals. Rare earth minerals, with names like neodymium, praseodymium, and dysprosium, are crucial to the manufacture of magnets used in industries of the future, such as wind turbines and electric cars. And they are already being used in consumer goods such as smartphones, computer screens, and telescopic lenses. This week the U.S. Senate passed a law aimed at improving American competitiveness that includes provisions to improve critical minerals supply chains. U.S. aims to boost production and processing of rare earths and lithium, another key mineral component, while working with allies to increase sustainable global supply and reduce reliance on competitors, Deputy Director of the National Economic Council Samira Fazili said on Tuesday. The best hope for boosting American production can be found at the Mountain Pass mine in California. Once one of the major players in the sector, the mine suffered as China rose and ate up its market share, aided by Beijing's subsidies. China is expected to remain dominant for some time to come, but experts say that if recycling is scaled up, 20 to 30% of Europe's rare earth magnet needs by 2030 could be sourced domestically in the EU from literally zero today. Bidder pays $28 million for trip to space with Bezos' Blue Origin's crewed space flight on July 20th. An illustration of the capsule that will take tourists into space. AP. Agence France-Presse Washington. A mystery bidder paid $28 million at auction on Saturday for a seat alongside Jeff Bezos on board the first crewed space flight of the billionaire's company Blue Origin next month. The Amazon founder revealed this week that both he and his brother Mark would take seats on board the company's New Shepard launch vehicle on July 20th, to fly to the edge of space and back. The Bezos brothers will be joined by the winner of Saturday's charity auction, whose identity remains unknown, and by a fourth, as yet unnamed space tourist. The name of the auction winner will be released in the weeks following the auction's conclusion, tweeted Blue Origin following the sale. Then, the fourth and final crew member will be announced. Stay tuned. Thank you. Thank you so much for watching this video as a podcast. Do like, share and comment. Press the subscribe button and hit the bell icon to get new notifications. Thank you. Take care and stay safe. God bless you all. Jai Ma Bharti. To download news and editorials in MP3, follow us on Telegram, Virtual School. The link is provided in the description below.